last week, there are a couple of technical drawings that are drawn to scale, okay? And the first one is called the plan. And anyone who's done interior design or architecture knows that a plan is the layout of a space looking straight down and drawn to scale. Okay, so in this case, I'm not sure what the scale is, but it could be like 1 foot equals 1 inch. Okay, so what the scale ratio stands for is if it is 1 foot in real life, it is 1 inch on my drawing. So a 10 foot by 10 foot room becomes a 10 inch by 10 inch drawing, right? You know, a 3 foot door frame becomes a 3 inch door frame. Okay, so that's scale drawing for a plan. And as you all know, the Toronto real estate market is booming. So if you are shopping for condos, you have spent a lot of time looking at plans, you know, if you're buying from a builder off of a plan, because real estate in Toronto is big business. This is a much more detailed plan. This is an engineering architectural plan for doing a building. So this is a lot, you know, once you actually build the condo, this is the kind of plans that engineers and the builders are working with, okay? Now for us, the plan is very helpful when you are planning retail, okay? And this will definitely be coming up further in your classes if it hasn't yet. This is the idea of real estate in a store. And I think you're gonna have Kathy in January, who's terrific. And Kathy's done a lot of this stuff where you have to manage where product goes. And Sean, for sure, I mean, that was like his whole career was like figuring out how to best position product so that it sells in the store, right? Because you deal with something called sell-through, S-E-L-L-T-H-R-O-U-G-H, sell-through. And it's the idea of you manufacture a bunch of clothing and you have some stuff, if some stuff sells really well, then you sell through and then you put something else there in the prime areas. Okay, so having these layouts of your store where everything goes is a huge part of visual merchandising, okay? So anyone that goes into like large, high-end retail will be dealing with this for the rest of their career of what goes where. Money mapping. I'm not sure, Veronica. I've never heard that term, but you definitely, like if you only have like 10 of an item, you don't put it in the main, like the closer it is to the front, you know, gets the most traffic. Back in the corners by the fitting rooms and stuff is where you want to put the sale stuff. Planogram, we're going to talk about in 2 seconds, Hitasha. That is something different, but it's the same idea. Okay, so this particular thing is a retail plan. Planogram is actually a wall layout. Actually, planogram may be used for retail plans as well. I'm not sure, but I always thought of it as a wall display, but we will get there. Don't worry. Good observation. Okay. Here's another retail plan, again, from a department store. You know, how are you going to position your product so that the most traffic coming in through the front doors, you know, this table here, front and center, is like dominant in terms of what sells, right? If you only have like small stuff, a little bit left, then you hide it in the corners. Okay, this one is also a retail plan, but this one has electric. So this is more about actual store planning, which when I was a designer with Mac, we had like a whole store planning side of the company that was out in Markham, and they would deal with all the logistics of lighting and electrical and, you know, non-movable items and things like that. Okay, then another scaled drawing is an elevation, okay? And an elevation is, again, drawn to scale, but it's when you're looking straight on at the side of a building. Here we have my new house, I wish, that I'm having built. No, it's this beautiful home and everything is to scale. So again, a builder could go off this with they have these little rulers, scale rulers that say 1 inch, on here is equal to 1 foot in real life. And you can use the ruler and basically you would be able to build a building from these drawings. Okay. So here we have a front, a side, a back, and another side elevation. Okay. And basically this shows you exactly what this building is going to look like when it's built. I remember when I was in design school, I had to do a project. There's a really beautiful historical building called Campbell House, which is at University in Queen. And it's the headquarters of the Law Society. And we had to go to Campbell House. I was at OCAD and measure a brick on the side of the building. And then we had to count bricks of the building. And then we had to do a scale drawing of Campbell House using the brick measurements. So we only had the measurement of 1 brick and we had to literally count like how many, 400 bricks or whatever was across the front, the side, blah, blah, blah. And then you used bricks for like each window was 3 bricks wide. So you figured it all out. And it was this like ridiculously hard drafting project. But man, did I ever learn about scale. You guys are so lucky I'm not making you do that in this class. Anybody wants to do it, you can. I won't stop you, but it's not part of project 2. Okay, this is a planogram. Okay, it is a wall elevation where you have the product and where it's laid out. So you send this out if you're at head office to your visual merchandisers, and they will then install, the shelving, because everything's movable. I'm sure Sean has talked to you about this. Like everything gets moved around. Some things are hanging, some things are folded. And keeping the store fresh and interesting is a big part of visual merchandising. And the planogram will do that because you want brand consistency, right? Like if you go to a Gap store anywhere in the world, you will see the same store layouts on any season because it gets generated in head office, right? So this is what I always thought of as a planogram, but it's possible that it's used for in-store planning as well, okay? And then again, so you get sent the visuals, you install, right? All of that shelving, everything is completely flexible in terms of like what goes where. You can move things around, you can change where everything goes and the heights and things like that. It's the same thing with product. You can get sent out where the product has to go in a store. Okay, scaled elevations. So this is the idea of it's to scale, and it's also to using 1 point perspective, which we talked about last week. And I'm going to be doing a lecture on 1 point after this one. But can anybody get in the chat and tell me which brand this represents? Because they have patented their store design. Okay. Yes, you guys are fast. Apple takes their brand identity so seriously that they have like copyrighted this store layout, okay, as part of their brand identity, which I find very interesting. Okay, so for you, the case display we're working on is going to be rolling into the rolling cases that are around the college, right? You will be doing these projects. So you're designing one case, but in groups, you'll be doing these beautiful small product case displays, okay? So that is what the drawings you are working on for me are going to end up. So here we have the templates of the case, and these are in your week 6 weekly folder. Your product is going in here. You already have the 1 point perspective set out for you on the one on the right. And it has all the measurements on it. So 18 inches by 15.5 inches. So if you were going to scale this down, you would have like if 1 inch equals, let's say 1/2 inch equals 1 inch in real life, that would be 50% smaller. So you'd have a 9-inch drawing by, oh my God, I'm so bad at math. What's half of 15.5? I don't know. 7 3/4. You can tell I'm not a math whiz, but you get the idea, right? So your scale for this drawing probably would be around 50%, right? And I just want you to think about it because you don't want to put, like, if you have like a drawing of an 18-inch case and you're doing product that's like, you know, a cream, you know, and a tube of something, and it fills up the entire case, like then your perspective, I'm sorry, your ratio is wrong, your scale is wrong, right? Because if your packaging is 3 inches and you're doing a 50% scale, it has to be a 1.5 inch on this drawing, okay? So just keep that in mind. You know, I'm not going to be taking out a ruler and measuring stuff, but you have to be aware of the scale of your product going into these cases. And that is a big part of project 2. There we go. We've got our vanishing point, our display case, and again, and our measurements. And this is on your week 6 folder, in your week 6 folder. Okay, so here's a couple drawings from students of their finals, right? So they would have had the 4 different development and they end up with the 1 final, which is going to be your beautiful drawing. This is your absolute, this is the goal. It's 25% of your mark for the project. So really spend some time on making it gorgeous, right? So you can see how it's in the case and it is scaled properly. If that Lise Wattier product was as tall as your case, you'd have a real problem because then it would be this 18-inch, you know, product, which, you know, I'm sure they make, but it's not something you'd find in the store, right? All right, so here we go. Planogram details how the merchandising and layout of a store is planned out. The planogram forms as a schematic or diagram for merchandising teams to follow and is generally included as a part of a wider brief or visual merchandising directive. So planogram comes from head office and the people at retail in the different stores execute the plan according to that season's directives. So here we have planogram and then going into what actually happens in the store. Very closely related, obviously. And one of the things that you're evaluated on as a visual merchandising manager is how close you are getting your in-store display to the overall brand identity of that season of the company. Because if your store doesn't look like what head office wants, you're going to be getting some feedback that is not favorable from your regional manager. So here we have some more planograms. And that is an Hermes window. And somebody, you know, in Paris went and planned out where all that stuff went on this window display that's made to look like an in-store display of all that beautiful Hermes product. So in-store displays, again, you will get scale drawings of where things are supposed to go. So these are some drawings of in-store display. And we're going to be talking about 2-point perspective, which is used in this drawing in the lecture. You do not have to get into 2-point drawing today, okay? This is for your own information right now. But you can see how you can get some really gorgeous drawings and a very clear idea of how the store is going to look just from your drawing skills. This is what you are learning here, how to really articulate your ideas as a designer so someone can implement them, right? It may be you, it may be a team, who knows, but the clearer the drawing, the more successful you'll be, and you know, the more likely it is that it will actually look like how you want it when it's installed. There we go. So that is a fully installed store. And all of that product, all of that, you know, the placement of the mannequins, everything was laid out according to what the visual merchandising manager, you know, how they interpreted the directives from the head office. Same idea. Isn't this exciting? This is like Retail's fun. I'm sure you guys are getting really into it. I'm sure you love to shop. Otherwise, you wouldn't be in visual merchandising. And it is really great to go out to stores and see what people are doing, right? Because department stores, like they have their boutiques for Gucci or, Chanel, and then they have the rest of it where all the, which brand is going to be featured, and brands pay. Believe me, like if you're in Bergdorf Goodman in New York or Holt Renfrew in Toronto, those brands are paying for their real estate. The closer they are to the money, the more they pay. So maybe it is money mapping. Who said that? Yeah. Veronica. Yeah, maybe that is what it's called. I think this is just really creative. I like the use of the reflective material. I think the store layout is beautiful. And this is what all of the scale drawing ends up in, right? This is the final product. Gorgeousness. Doesn't this just make you want to drop money? This must be Gucci. This is what you do. You design in-store display, and it's really exciting. And how gorgeous is this? Your final project for this class is you're going to be doing a window display retail program. So start collecting all the inspiration of what you want to do for your final project, right? Because this is what all of our drawing skills are building towards. So you have this amazing finale at the end of the term. Okay, window display. So scale drawing and rendering. And here we have one of my fashion studies students did a 1 inch equals 1 foot maquette. So a small mock-up of a window display, right? How cute is that? And this you could hand off to a designer who would measure everything and actually build this window. This generally is not what stores do. They usually use drawings, right? But I love this stuff. So I have my fashion studies students actually build me little fold up, like pop-up maquettes of window displays. There you go. And then they end up going in the window. So somebody drew all this out, and someone had to plan all of the execution of the electrics and the base and have the props made. And it was all done, I promise you, with detailed drawings. Same idea. This started with a quick sketch somewhere with a designer saying, I think we're going to do an ostrich hanging the purses off the ostrich neck. And then whoever else was in the room was like, what? That sounds terrible. And then someone took out a sketchbook and did a super quick sketch and said, here's the idea. And the neck's going to stretch between two windows. And then the person was like, oh, I get it now. Oh, that's going to be amazing. We're going to sell so much product from that. Look at those bags. How fun, right? Welcome to visual merchandising. Okay, gorgeous. And shops need to think about reflection on their window glasses. They do. It's actually hard to photograph windows, as you will see. Like they have, when you have your window displays photographed, they use a black screen around the camera. So it's only the camera showing, right? But look at this. Again, someone had to, like they didn't go out and buy a train car and stick it in the window. Someone drew out everything. A designer like you was in Paris working for Vuitton for this window display and did everything to scale, and came up with this whole window program and said, we're going to need graphics on the back. So it looks like a train is moving. We're going to have to build all this custom mahogany for this window display. I mean, they spent some serious money on this gorgeous display, and it works, right? Because we love it. We're so into it. It creates a mood, it creates a theme, and it creates a whole environment, right? And all of this is what makes for successful visual merchandising, and drawing is a way of working out a lot of ideas before you spend 20 grand on laminated wood and then have it be an unsuccessful window. I mean, that's a problem, right? So what you were doing now is getting skilled up to articulate all your ideas before it goes into production. Ta-da! Great window, right? someone said, I want to do this whale. And someone was like, what? And then they pulled out the sketch and they were like, oh, wow, it looks like she's underwater and there's a whale coming up. And I love it. I am going to spend $6,000 on that purse because it's so great. Welcome to Hermes. Okay. Ta-da, there is a perspective drawing that I found on the internet that could have gone in project one, because look at that shading, that value shading. This may go into next year's project one, just so I can really torture my students, you know, because that's my job.